So, I'm not gonna have a long ass intro this time, probably for the best. But I am gonna say that the first thing I'm going to talk about is probably by most people's, well, almost everybody's definition here would be like a first grade thing. But I figure it was pretty interesting, so might as well cover it. So, yeah. So, as many of you could probably tell, the interesting thing about this is the year that is mentioned. And this dialogue is brought up when you get the town map from the library, you borrow it, and then when you talk to the librarian again, she'll tell you this: come back in the year 2001 to return it. And it's pretty strange, I would say, that this game was released in, 1994. And at least to me, of all things, why would they give the exact year? I know, it's an entire year, but why would they give the exact year of the 7-Eleven job application? Like, what frequency would possess someone to put that year of all years in 1994 instead of, I don't know, say, return it in 2010, return it in 2000? What a weird year to pick, 2001, to put in this one dialogue. And, I know Nintendo, the company, is a giant company that's definitely one of the people at the table, or whatever, one of the creepy people at the table, for sure, the company itself. But do the creators that put this in? No, I don't believe that. You know how this place flows, and at this point, probably what I think of that kind of stuff, I would say. So, chalk it up to retrocausality, predictive programming. Just strange. Just strange to me that it would be the exact year of the 7-Eleven job application of all years. It would put that one for this little dialogue. Okay. First grade example out of the way. Let's go to the main meat, I would say, of the video. So, just for a little context for anyone who hasn't played the game, which, I don't know. This is the location of, as was mentioned not too long ago in the last video, this is the first location of Ness's sanctuary locations. This is the first of the 8. And its title is Giant Step. And as you can see, it is a giant footprint. Now, many people wouldn't really look at this as much as, oh, it's just, it's a giant footprint. What's special about that? It's just a thing. And I just kind of look at it. It made me think right away of the presentation about, what we're supposed to believe about space and all that stuff. And, if you believe space or not, I personally don't, but what we're told, what we presented, And in this case, it makes me think of that famous saying from Buzz Lightyear himself, Buzz Cauldron, as Matt would call him.
This is one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
And, giant step, giant leap. That's just what it makes me think of. And oh yeah, leaving your footprint on the moon or something like that, or whatever, on a piece of dust. Just giant footprint here. That's what it kind of makes me think of. But what it really makes me think of, at least on a context of Ness's quest, is Ness's quest both in the game and I guess anybody's quest spiritually would be, spiritual journey would be the first step is the biggest step. And if you've played the game, you could also kind of say almost that this is one of the hardest parts of the game in a way, that this beginning section when you're by yourself. You're completely alone in your journey, in your journey here. It's just you against multiple enemies many of the times. Your statistics, your strength is pretty low. You're not very strong. And a lot of fights you end up pretty beaten when you at the end of them, and it's definitely not the easiest part of the game. I'm not saying it's the hardest, but it's pretty up there. Similar to playing the original Dragon's Quest game where you're just by yourself. It's not easy. And I would say that is kind of what I see with this, is that this first sanctuary location and its meaning is this is the first but almost the biggest, the most gigantic step of his journey is, and anybody's spiritual journey, I guess, or anybody's journey to finding their true self or whatever, is the first one. When you first kind of awaken to the idea that this place is almost like a fabrication, or just the society itself that you've grown up in, has been completely lied about. You've been lied to your whole life. And I would say that most people that have gone through this feel very alone, in most regards, and they still do throughout their journey, but and maybe that's a point of it to some degree. But in this part, you feel very alone because nobody else around you seems to realize or understand why you feel this way. It's like, why do I feel lied to? People are like, nobody's lying to you. What are you talking about? And you're just like, you're on completely different frequency as everybody else, it seems, and you just feel completely alone. You feel depressed, probably, to some degree. Depends on how you go through it, I guess. But this is also the most important part, because if you never got to this part, you'd just be the same as everybody else. You'd be the NPC down the road. You wouldn't be questioning anything. You would think that this world everything is real. Everything that's told to you has been honest and truthful and everything, and you have nothing to question. You have nothing changed about yourself or anything. Just keep going along to get along. And this first big giant step is the most important one, by far, I would say. And it's also interesting because in the context of the game, I'm going to get onto this in the next video, which is probably going to be a pretty long one, I would think, but about the theme of the adversaries you're first going against in this part of the game is, it's basically society in a way. It's basically society and minions within society, and this is the first people you're going against. And I would think that is almost similar to our own experience, where the first thing you have to get against, the biggest step, is getting through the society itself, the programming, and just realizing that there is no reason to believe what you've been told by these quote-unquote authorities and systems and parts of society, and just getting through that. And that's what I see the meaning of this is that this is Ness's first big important step through his spiritual journey, just like we all have gone through in the same way. And yeah, that's how I see this, at least. So have your own interpretations. That's mine. To some people it might mean nothing, but to me that's how I interpret this. And the next small thing I'm going to be talking about is just a, probably most people would see it as very benign or not that interesting dialogue from a random NPC in the first town of the game. I actually don't have any footage of it, unfortunately, but it's, it's just text. But basically the character says, it's like she says, there is a girl in the town over Tucson named Paula, and I believe, and she seems to have some magic powers. And in the context of the game, that's funny because it's not funny, but it's foreshadowing, obviously, that the next party member you're going to get her name is Paula. That's the next party member you're going to get going into the town Tucson, the next town over. But what is referenced as every enemy, adversary, whatever, and character in the game that uses quote-unquote magic is actually called in the game PSI or psi, whatever, or psionics. It would be like, I don't really know the definition that science fiction gives that exactly, but basically using your, as in the Matrix or whatever, bending spoons with your mind or whatever, your mind magic. And while this, like I said, this might just seem like a benign foreshadowing or whatever, I look at it, it's interesting that the girl calls it magic, and most people would probably call anything they don't understand like that magic. But to some degree, it also makes me think like, and this is something that I'm going to allude to much, 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 much later in this series, is that perhaps this magic, these abilities, these powers that are coming from these characters and these characters that Ness is able to use and others in his party are able to use and everything, it's not something that I would think is psionics, which would be something coming from power of the mind or whatever, or the brain, the meaty brain. I would think that maybe it's something completely absent of the brain or whatever. It's something that comes, it's magic, that being something we don't understand or people don't understand, but it is this power that is coming from within the person, like, I guess not something I could really define as like a soul magic or something like that, like a magic based on your coming from your real self or whatever, your real spiritual self. That's how I would kind of look at it, is like maybe it's not something that's coming from the mind. Like that's like a misnomer or whatever that term is or whatever, is that it's not coming from your fleshy meat brain, but it's being transmitted through there in some way, but really it's coming from somewhere else, more deeper ingrained in yourself or something like that. That's how I look at it. That, probably not, but that's just how I look at it. And maybe it'll make sense later on when I get more to that point, but that's just what I interpret from that. Like I said, this isn't going to be a very long video compared to the last one, but this is what I wanted to get through in a sort of chronological order of the events that happened in the game, just to keep it somewhat organized. Otherwise, it would just be a complete mess, and it wouldn't make any sense to most people. So, this is the progression of Ness's journey in this kind of sequence. So, the next thing I'm going to be talking about is, well, I guess you'll see. So, I'll keep it until then, and thanks for watching.